Hey, welcome back. Alivia Roberts, Harrison Lilly is actually out today, but we have Zach with ZB Electric that we're going to be talking with. He is a local business owner, and he's doing some really unique things that nobody else around here is doing. So welcome, Zach.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business.
Okay, so I'm Zach Bennett, born and raised in West Monroe. Married for 14 years now, so I got married young. We have two kids, Macy, who's 13, Nate, who is 10 years old now, just turned 10. So I've been doing electrical since I got out of high school, and started ZB Electric 3 years ago. Actually, this month, 3 years.
Okay. Because you've been an electrician for 15 years. In my head, ZB Electric was older than that.
No.
Oh, okay. Wow. So then you've really done a lot in 3 years.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I was impressed at 15, but dang. Okay. So tell us a little bit about ZB Electric, because you also do generators. So tell us all, when we say electric, there's so many things. Well, what does your business do?
Yeah, so a lot of people think we just wire houses, but we actually don't do that at all. We've only done one house. So we do just strictly repairs, service work. So if you have a light that doesn't work, we're going to come fix it.
Okay.
And then the whole home generators, that's been good for us.
Okay.
We've been doing that for the entire time. I've done those for a long time. So.
Okay. Well, tell us more about the whole home generators, because I know what was it? Was it a few years ago? I remember what storm was it? Everybody's electricity was out. It was just crazy. And then people would be like, well, I have a generator. And we had ours thankfully never went out, but we had a, what is it when it's not an in-home generator? It's just a
portable
generator. Yeah. And we loaned it out. So, but tell us about the in-home generators and why people like those.
The main thing is they're automatic. So power goes out 10 seconds later. We do Kohler. So 10 seconds later, you have power back. So
nice. That's helpful.
You don't go very long without AC with that. Yeah. So everything's automatic. You don't have to do anything. So that's why people like them. We do remote monitoring. So if there's a problem with the generator, we know before you know.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that's another part of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And you operate what pieces of, I know obviously Ouachita Parish, how far do you go in all the directions?
We pretty much do North Louisiana. We don't really go to Shreveport.
Okay.
There's guys over there that take care of that area. Pretty much Arcadia all the way to Lula.
Okay.
Yes, so.
Okay.
Arcadia to
Lula. Yeah. And right now, you have, because I know it's you've got Summer that's taking care of the phones. You guys are growing, so you're actually in the process of hiring. And you have, how many electricians do you guys have?
So we have 3 journeymen, 2 apprentices right now. Okay. Probably going to pick up another apprentice. We're hiring for the office. So we'll have 2 office, 6 in the field, and then myself.
Okay. And for anybody that's not familiar, what's the difference between a journeyman and an apprentice?
So a journeyman has the experience. Typically, it takes about 5 years to get that, and then you can take a test and you get a journeyman's license.
Okay.
Apprentice. So we actually have a program. We're non-union, which is different. Most apprentices are in the union and they go through a 4-year apprenticeship, but we're actually non-union. I'm a certified instructor for a program, and we put them through the 4 levels of that apprenticeship.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. And I know when I was over there, and I may be, correct this if I'm wrong, I may be misquoting, but I want to say that somebody got through the first section or something in 9 months because y'all were kind of bragging on him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He did really well. So 9 months instead of the 12, which is fine. As long as you can prove you know what you're doing, then you can pass. So.
Okay, that's very cool. Yeah. And how long have you been, certified to be an instructor?
I think about 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did it pretty quick. As far as after I started the business, that's something it was important to me. I want to be able to take people in and teach them the right way. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's, and you seem pretty passionate about that. I know that you're always learning and you're interested in the people that are around you. You're helping them learn and grow. Where does that passion come from?
I would say from my experience from previous employers, that's kind of a big drive. Just to say it, I mean, we just had crappy equipment, and just not very well taken care of. So that's kind of a passion, is like, I want to take care of people. I want them to want to come to work, you know. So
yeah, it's funny. And like sometimes sometimes we do things because of, and sometimes it's like in spite of. It's like, I know a lot of people that they're now in the business that they're in because maybe when they utilize that business, I think of a lot of like realtors. They're like, when I went to buy my house, they didn't, I didn't feel good about the situation. And so I became a realtor. And then you're like, my experience wasn't quite and so I want to create a different experience for the people that work with me. That's cool. Okay. Yeah. And so you grew up here. Where'd you go to high school?
West Monroe.
West Monroe. Yeah. We hated you guys.
Yeah.
No, I went to like 3 different high schools, but I graduated from Washita High though. Yeah. And y'all just always beat us.
Yeah.
I graduated in 2000. I remember that was I think my softball team, I think it was either my junior or senior year. We were the only, must have been our junior year. I don't remember. But like the only team that beat us in softball was West Monroe. And they didn't just they embarrassed us. Yeah. And you were like, I would really like to hate y'all, but like it was kind of fun to watch. I'm like, money, Yeah. Okay. So now I know that you're looking to continue to grow and to get into other businesses as well. So kind of like, what's next for you?
I always have plans, of, I guess, vision of doing things. Really just kind of, I wanted to step out and do some other things. I heard a saying the other day that, 100 golden BBs is better than one silver bullet. So kind of just spreading out, doing a few different things. Obviously in the electrical world, we're going to stay service work. We're not going to do new construction. I do own another small business. We make and sell some screwdrivers, which is really weird to people, but it does well. So
yeah.
And then obviously real estate is investment properties is, most people do that whenever you go on a business. You kind of venture off into that. So that's something that's coming. So.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So when you think about, well, actually, let me back up a bit. What caused you, was it a confidence thing? What caused you to say, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you know what? Like, I'm ready. And did you just jump out and do it? Or did it take you a while to kind of what was that process like for you?
Our story is pretty crazy. So we actually lived in Vicksburg 3 years ago.
Okay.
I worked for a nuclear power plant that Energy owns, and
something you don't hear every day. I worked at a nuclear plant.
Yeah, and so I guess we go back 5 years ago. I tried to get a transfer back to West Monroe because we wanted to be back home. We were living over there, and we were from here, so we wanted to be back. And they denied that transfer 3 times. And so on the 3rd time, something told me, I was like, I'm going to get to a place where nobody can tell me where I'm going to live. And so kind of that started. I didn't know about ZBL. I didn't have this plan,
Yeah.
But that definitely fueled it. And just fast forward to 3 years ago, we were actually about to build a house and about to sign papers, and we just decided overnight to come back home.
Yeah.
So left a very well-paying job to come back to with no clients or nothing.
Yeah,
so we started from nothing.
Yeah. And I always like to ask this question because, so your wife, her name is Lauren?
Yep.
Okay. So you and Lauren, you're all high school sweethearts, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been since we were 15. So.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So high school sweethearts. Y'all move. You're in Vicksburg. Y'all both want to come home, and then you take this leap of I'm just going to start this. I don't have any clients. I haven't, I'm just going to go. I haven't lived there in a long time. How was that for her? Was she whoa, let's do this? Or is she more of a cautious? How did you talk her into it, or did you have to?
No, a little bit. she's definitely the more kind of let's plan this out, type thing, or have a plan, everything dialed in.
Yeah.
But it was more, I think she just trusted me, really.
Yeah.
Leap of faith, and she wanted to be back home, so it was important for her to come back. So it wasn't, I didn't have to convince her a lot.
Yeah.
It was rough in the beginning.
Yeah.
Financially. So.
And you're I think we've asked 3 or 4 other people about that leap of faith when somebody stepped out. And it was interesting to me that all of them, that's kind of what they said about their wives. Like, we didn't have to really convince, we had conversations, but they just trusted that. So, and I think for a lot of people, it's not, it's blind trust, but I would imagine like you had, we have to prove ourselves worthy of that trust. And it sounds like you've done a good job of her to trust you to make that move. So that's really cool. Now, so talk about getting started, because I know a lot of people, when they think about starting a business or going out on their own, I mean, it's pretty dang scary. And you said it was rough at the beginning.
Yeah.
Walk me through what that looked like.
So I guess I can only share my experience. So I still have the truck, but a bed-lined 95 Tacoma with, I always tell people I started with that. I had a little toolbox in the back, and I had a box of outlets and switches, and I just, put myself on Google. My grandma put an ad in Columbia. She's from Columbia, so she put a little ad in Columbia, which actually got us some business. It was really cool.
I love that family support. That's cool. Your mama going, I got you.
Yeah, I still have those newspaper clippings, so I hang those up. And just, I did a lot of research, very little sleep, really, honestly. I did, I wanted to, and something important to me was to run the business, but also not be the only thing that I do. I wanted to hang out with my family, so at that important time. So, everybody always says it must be nice. Like, they see you doing stuff, but they don't realize, like, you work during the day, then you have those hours with your family, and then like at midnight when everybody else is sleeping, you're up.
Yeah.
Like, you're up working, figuring it out. So, that part was rough. And then we just didn't have any money, at all, and advertising is very expensive, but necessary. So, and it just started picking up,
How long did it take from, what did the business look like at first when it was just, you with the Tacoma and some light switches, before you felt, well, I don't know if that's the right word, because I don't know. Sometimes even we've been in the business for a long time and we've been running our own business for a long time. Sometimes we still feel like any minute, it's all going to be over. Where were you, or what, but what was it or that got you to the point where you were like, okay, we're going to be okay, or this is going to work?
Yeah, I think it really took about probably a year. Because, like I said, people have to know you. There's a saying that if they don't know you, they can't flow you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that.
I've heard things similar, but I haven't heard that one. I like that. If they don't know you, they can't flow you. Yeah.
So a lot of, there was times where we didn't even get paid. Like, I can give you a specific example. I needed $253 to pay our bills. I don't remember what bill it was. Maybe it was rent or something.
Yeah.
And we had nothing. And we got a phone call that evening. I went and did the job the next morning, and I made $256. So I had $3 to spare. It was just a moment of like, okay, this is going to work. Like, it may be tough, but we just have to have the faith. So, that part was pretty tough those days. I guess it really, word of mouth is a big deal. And so after about a year of doing stuff, then we started getting those calls where like, hey, you did work for this person. We want to use you, Okay. And so that the word of mouth really, I think, is like a boost for a business.
Yeah.
Versus just Google. I mean, that's Google's right. Good, but word of mouth is
better. Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. So so about a year, and then you started getting repeat. Now I know, like, because you have, you mentioned Google, and I know you advertise on Google, but you also have tons of reviews on Google. Yeah. Like, is it 200, 500, something?
We got about 230.
230
right now.
So did you do anything in particular at the beginning? Did you request for reviews? Or like, even that, at the very beginning, did you ask or did people just start referring you? How did that?
So I pretty much from the beginning, like I said, I did a lot of research before and stuff, and I knew that was important, especially for just service work. So I would ask everybody. We created a link, QR code, everything, just however to do it. And so at the end of the job, I mean, there was no... My whole thing was when I leave, they're going to be satisfied. So I don't have to worry about a bad review. Like I'm going to ask right then to get it. And so a lot of people are more than thrilled to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
What's your line? What's your ask?
I don't really have one. I kind of just, at the end, just be like, well, most people, I ask them how they found us. That's one thing. And if they say Google, or not really, I kind of just bring that up. A lot of people find us on Google, our type of business. I'd really appreciate a review. I never tell them to give us a 5-star, but just ask them for an honest review. Yeah. And a lot of people will do, and you can read them, they do really good on them. Yeah. So it's like they're almost professional reviewers or something, but it's pretty cool, just that whole experience.
Okay, awesome. So for anybody listening, he hit the nail on the head. Like, ask. People, actually, I find that people want to help. Like it makes, and I know for me, like I like to know who to refer. I like to know, and I love to give reviews and not for the review's sake, but like, I don't know. It's like, you feel like I don't know what the word is, but you feel good about it, I guess. I know that kind of sounds, so sometimes I think when we ask, some people worry if like they ask for a review, are we being pushy or no, I think we're almost doing them a disservice if we don't ask. Yeah. Because they don't get the opportunity to say something good, and everybody likes that. Let's say if you're having a bad day, do something nice for somebody, and all of a sudden your day gets better. So you're giving them that opportunity. So, okay, so that's awesome. So again, from, 0 years to 3 years, 0 was, it was just you and a Tacoma and a light switch, to 3 years and 11 people, something, almost 11 people right now. Yeah. And asking for those referrals, asking for the reviews. That's huge. Now, you said, you said something in the beginning that I thought was really interesting, where you said you knew that, yes, you wanted to be successful in your business, but you also wanted to have a life, spend time with your family. How did that mindset come about? Because a lot of people want that. And yet I think sometimes they can go, okay, well, I'll have that once I make it, and so next thing they know, it's 10 years and they haven't carved that out. Yeah. How did you balance that?
I think the biggest thing, I've turned down a lot of stuff. So, opportunities for, working on weekends, like you can make really good money if you work on the weekends, especially some of these jobs, but turning stuff like that down is one way. And that's a balance when you're starting up, because you need the money, when you're starting up. But I think the biggest thing is trading that time. So I've if I go eat lunch at my kids' school, I'm just gonna give an example, maybe from 11 to 1 or something like that. Well, I have to make those hours. So that's just not for free, So I'll spend that time at night after they go to bed. So it's kind of a sacrifice on myself, my sleep, but just making that a number one priority. So my thing is faith, family, then business. Yeah. And I think if you ask the people that work at ZB Electric, they'll say that's true, because I don't do that just for me; it's for them too. So, it's just an important part. Keep those in order.
Yeah. Well, and I love that faith, family, business, and you're right. It's that intentionality, right? Like I love that, or I'm sure you've heard the saying. You can say, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Like sometimes it's a challenge, because you're like, man, I'm gonna go do this, and we'll make this much, or this, that, or the other. And then what people don't realize is, I just said no to spending time with my kids, my spouse, my significant other, doing something that's fun. And not, I know sometimes, are you familiar with the 4 quadrants?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So it's the, which I think you and I've talked about that, but the, it's excessive fun. Okay, that's not going to help you be successful. But quadrant 2, important and not urgent, is that the renewal time, the relationship building. If you're not there, and for anybody, I'm referencing the 4 quadrants from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But if you don't spend that time, what happens is you burn out, you get pissy, you get everything else, and then things don't work. You have to have that time. A lot of times I'll tell people, that time is as important as your lead generation. Because if you don't do that, you can't, it's kind of that old saying of, you can't pour something out if you don't have it. So if you're burnt out, you might think you're working a lot, but what you're doing is you're probably just doing busy work all day, versus like actually things that can make a difference. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned research quite a bit. So talk with me about your journey. Like, I know you have coaches. I know, like, you read, you research, has that been always, or did that start with the business?
That really started when I started the screwdriver company, was 2019, so it's a little bit older. Really, I guess it started when they told me, no, I can't do something. And I was like, well, I'm going to figure out, nobody's going to tell me what I can do, type deal. So I started learning. I read, just a lot of books. I think it was like 54 books, and some of them I've read like 5 or 6 times. So, so just, and Grant Cardone, I'm sure you've heard of him. Yeah. So he has the saying, or just a line that, people look at a book and it's $30 and they're like, I'm not buying that. And then, but somebody that is successful or wants to be says, well, I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to find that one sentence that changes my, shifts the direction of my life, Yeah. And so when he said that, I was like, well, that's really good, because you can't. I just gave a little talk yesterday morning in our meeting about mentors. So you can't just have one mentor and do everything they say. You got to find multiple sources. And so that's kind of what I did. I got a little bit from everybody. Yeah. And and just take that and kind of make it to what I believe and what I want to do for my company. So a lot of reading, a lot of late nights, researching, blogs. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Yeah, yeah. Well, and I love there's a saying, there are people that have gone before you. Mm-hmm. Like, let's learn from them. And I do agree too. Like, you can't. I think having different mentors, and mentors that and mentors that you may never meet because you read their stuff, or you read that blog, or I think that's huge. So you said 54. Yeah, I think that was in about a year. In about a year. Okay. So I did a lot, and it really quick. Like you went to college. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like on your, like, how do I, like, this is, whether, life, business, whatever. Like, and I think that a lot of times, people don't think of it that way, but like that $30 book was cheaper than that college class, but you got to be able to hyper focus on what it is that you were looking to build and look at. So what were the books that you read multiple times? The 10X, which is Grant Cardone, was one. I actually read Entre Leadership. Ramsey. Yeah. So, a lot of people I find a lot of people haven't read that. I think that's one of his best books. Yeah. I've read it multiple times. The Legend of the Monk and the Merchant. I don't know if you've heard of it. I have not. It's not very long, but it's just good. Okay. It's a good little story to a business, or how to run a business. The 7 Habits. So I have not read that fully, but I've read about halfway through that one. That one's a long one, but it's really good. So I did get the workbook though. Good. Yeah. That was to be like, I've read 7 Habits so many times. It's like, because it is long, and then I coach out of it and I read it. But for me, the thing that I'll tie it up was when I got the workbook, because then you would read the section, do the workbook, or you could do the workbook really without the book. But I like doing both. Game changer. Oh yeah. That's a good one. And there's a lot more, like Millionaire Next Door. That was going on. Yeah. Shoot, I can't even think of all of them right now, but just a lot of books, not just to do with business, well-rounded, I guess. Yeah. Just being a dad, like I think it's called all-star dad or all-pro dad, something like that. Just stuff, just to try to be the best I can be in every area.
Yeah.
You know, and not just hyper-focus on business, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. When it's interesting you say that. I'm right there with you, because it's, I remember whenever, I don't have kids, but my nephew moved in with me, and when he was 10, and he lived with me until he was 17. And now prior to my younger life, I actually, I've worked in lots of places, but when I was in college, which I managed to turn a 2-year community college into a 4-year college and with no degree, which is funny because I like school. I love to learn, but it's in college. Well, I was working and playing, and but you have to, like, I didn't know this at the time, but I think particularly with ADHD, but you had to learn stuff. Like, I didn't want to go to that class because I wanted to learn this, but you had to go to these other that had nothing to do with this, and so that was a challenge. But so I worked at Walmart. I've managed softball parks, but my, like, cafes, you name it. But like my, I guess my big first time, like, adult job was at, I started as a part-time at a daycare and ended up running the place. And we had like 260 kids. And, by the time I left, and some of those were after school, or some of those, it was like 6 weeks to 12 years. But the interesting part about that was it's the people that don't read, and I say, like, I get that some people don't like to read. I'm like, you get that all the books are on Audible. So if I say read, sometimes I listen to them, sometimes I read them, sometimes I do both. There's videos, there's YouTube, there's Google. Like, there's so many aspects of places to go learn now that people that don't try to go learn things, I'm like you just running around here hitting your head up against the wall all the time. That's a hard way to live. But that's, so, like, so I had a lot of experience with kids, and then I've got 6 brothers, so there's tons of kids in my family, and my whole goal is I'm the favorite aunt. That's happening type thing. But when he when he moved in with me, that's the first thing I started doing was reading, like, every book that I could get my hands on, because I think, and again, I think you made a great remark earlier when you said, like, you read and you take bits and pieces. Yes, I don't think, just because you read it doesn't mean it has to be done this way, but it gives you some insight or a different way of looking at it or a different way of thinking about it. And that was a huge part of him living with me and me reading these books, because there'd be times that, I'd hear a family member, oh, you should just beat him. And I'm like, if that worked, I would, but it don't work for him, But I was like, then I'd read something, I'm like, oh, and I'd put it into place, and I'd be like, oh, that changed everything, and so, and I'm like, and that's not something I would have just naturally thought on, but somebody had been through that, they'd done research. So it just makes sense to, if you have a problem or something that you don't like, and you're like, okay, I want to get a different result. Don't just assume that there's not another way to do it. Because I do think sometimes we do that. I talk a lot about frustration and fascination. If you get frustrated with something, the creative part of your brain shuts down. So it just stops you. Where if you, when you get frustrated, if you ask yourself a different question, go, okay, wait a minute. If I was fascinated with figuring this out, I think I mentioned this last week on the podcast, like, even if it's, I'm trying to get out of my house at a certain time without having to yell at the kids in the morning, or, right. To how do I get more people to come to my business or whatever? I'm like, if you get fascinated and go, okay, if I didn't know anything, what would I do? Well, I would research. I would go, what did you do? What worked? Okay, what did you do? What worked? And I'm going to ask those questions. I may not attempt to do all those things, but at least ask to see what the options are. Yeah.
I think that's good. Something I've learned is, I always say, why would I take 10 years to do something I can figure out in 3? Or I may not be able to figure it out, but I can hire somebody that's been there or worked with people that have been there. And so basically, in my mind, like, I've had a business coach since like probably a month or two in business. And that was a leap of faith by itself because I didn't even have the money really. But anyway, buying that experience, I know that's why we're where we're at 3 years versus a lot of people at 10 are still not where we're at.
Yeah.
Just to buy that. So it's like a book, but you get a person when you buy a business coach.
That's
and
right.
It's very, it's just worth it. It's to me, I don't even know how you can make it without it. And I guess that's why most people don't. Most small businesses fail because I think they just try to like keep all the money themselves. That's a big thing that I've heard from other business owners that I talk to. And they're like, but I don't want to pay, this much for that. I can just figure it out. But you can, but like you said, you're running into the wall, and then you're like, oh no, I got to go this way.
Yes, yes. That's funny that you say that. Like I remember the first time I hired a business coach, and hopefully you guys weren't at this point. And I tell people, like, I'm not saying that what I did was the smart thing, but I'd been in business for a while, and I was at, it wasn't getting any better. And I had been in coaching before whenever I worked with my brother because he had a coach and we would coach as a team some. And I was a big researcher and all, just very much like you. And I remember I was like, my rent's late. I can pay rent or I can buy coach. And I'm like, or no, at this point my rent was not late. I was like, I could buy coach, but my rent's going to be late and I have to figure that out. And I was like, huh. And I said, you know what? My rent's been late before. It's going to keep being late if I don't figure this out. So I paid for the coach and then figured out the rent. And again, not saying that that's the smartest thing, but I was tired. It was like I was tired of getting the same result. I needed that 30,000 views, somebody that had been there before to go like, why are you doing it the hard way? Have you thought about this? What about this? And that was a game changer. But I agree. I think too, are you looking at things as an expense or an investment?
Oh, yeah.
And who better to invest in than yourself?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of it as well. Now, of course, it's got to be, not everybody's the right coach for everybody. Not everybody is. So I think sometimes that maybe they were maybe they didn't have the right coach for them at first, or maybe they didn't understand the coaching relationship or something. And then they're like, oh, that didn't work. I'm like, maybe just not been the right person for you, or you may have, or you may not have been as open as you thought or you intended to be in that relationship, because they're not a genie either, right? Yeah. You got to then go and implement what you've discovered.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember like stroking that check, and at the time I had signed it was a 1-year commitment for a lot of money. And I was like, am I really doing this? Yes. But paid off. And then, because we talked about that a lot. Like when you first get in your business, yes, you have to, have you read Profit First?
Yeah.
And I do love his theory of like, look, this is what you got to pay yourself first. And then but if you're not turning around and reinvesting in the business or in yourself, I think the challenge becomes the longer you've been doing something, I think the harder it is to see that it can be done a different way to get a different result, especially if you've had any type of success in it. Mm-hmm. That's usually people I work with when I see like the biggest challenges. Let's say that they've been really successful and they've got to here, but they want to get to here. And it's not anybody really telling them to go to here, but they want to do that, but they can't get beyond here, and helping them understand that like what you did was fine. It was good. It was great even to get to here, but those things aren't going to, it's like that good, great. Those same, that same behavior, thinking, and all of that habits aren't going to get you to here. And I think that's the hardest, or that's probably the most challenging is when somebody has had success, that because it's hard to admit that you're not, maybe not even admit, but it's hard to see it differently if this has worked. The flip side of that, though, is I've seen somebody that maybe they've been in business for a long time or attempted something for a long time. They become convinced that it'll never work.
Yeah.
And so like that's so hard to see. I've got somebody at the top of my mind right now, a family member that very much amazing at what he does, but he's convinced that's the only way to do it. And it's just, he's great at like, the doing of the business, but the running of the business, and won't read a book, won't watch, and then I'm like, but it's just been so long that he's just completely convinced that I just, it just won't work. And I'm like, but it's worked for other people.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But you got to be ready to do something different. And I'm a big believer too of Dinah Kokoska, one of my first ever mentor coaches before I met her. Like the first time I saw her at a conference, you would have thought I saw a rock star. 'Cause I was like, oh, that's Dinah Kokoska. But I had been watching her stuff and for a long time, and that's one of the things that she says. And not a lot of people say this, but you got to get to better. You got to get through different, and getting through different can suck.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah,
you got to be, you got to be okay to just do the hard thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, the most important thing is getting the advice, but is implementing it, like doing it. You have and trusting that process.
Yes,
very important.
Yeah, it's and that's it's, I think too, the trust in the process. Whenever we're doing something new, so like for instance, there's a gentleman that I coach as part of a team, and he's newer. And so, because sometimes I think our expectations, we have to help people align their expectations to what's happening as well. And he was, and he's doing the right things. He is lead generating, and he's doing the social media. Like he's doing the right things, but he's not having the results that some maybe of the other people are having right now. And I'm like, but you've been in this for 3 months, so you don't have any tenure. It's so. Don't judge what your results by over here. You just keep doing the thing, getting better at the thing, getting better at talking to people, getting better at learning this, and you will have those results and maybe even way faster and more than they did. But you just got to just trust the process. Just keep doing the thing. And it's such a hard thing to do though, because you look over there and you're like, oh, well, maybe I should do what they're doing. And then you yank everything and then you get, and you're like, squirrel. But, you're, and so that's the other thing I think about having that person that's gone before you to know, because there are times where you do need to change direction or pull the brake, but to have somebody else to be able to go, okay, like this was what we were going to do. You did the thing. We got better at it. You learned at it, all those things. And then the market shifted, or that, Yahoo went to Google, right? We've got to do something different. And so you have to know when to change. But I think a lot of times people change before they see. It's almost that, was it 10 feet from gold or whatever? You're like, you're almost there. Yep. And then you stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me about, so you are now in business. You're reading a lot. What are you reading right now?
I've kind of, I have the Prophet First. I'll say I don't follow that, but it's good information.
Well, that's the same. Like I don't, and I'm glad you said that, because like sometimes the concept or the I can like pieces of it, but I don't necessarily implement all of it because it's this or, you kind of see what makes sense out of that piece. But yeah. I think so that's a book. That's a good example of a book where you don't get everything. Like, so what I learned from that whole book is pay myself. Like I'm doing all this work, like you said earlier, you think, okay, well, after this amount of time, or if I reach this, then I'll do that. Well, you're going to get there and you're just going to have the next goal. Yeah.
You're not
the yardstick keeps moving. Yeah.
So just that book taught me to like, okay, take profit now and enjoy life. Obviously you have to do it smart, but and that way you're enjoying life now while you're growing, and you're still going to grow.
Yes. Yeah. There, because I think extremes, I think, is where we have to be really careful. And like, I'm somebody who I I tend to be extreme. Like I started running, and 3 months later I ran a marathon. Then I found out what an ultra marathon was. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm going to run 100 miles. Like, and I became like obsessive. So I have to be really intentional with, because I can get like very extreme. With the, so I think, extremes can be, if you're hyper-focused on something that's effective, and yet the extremes on either side. So if you pay yourself too much, now you're eating all the profit. You can't put anything back in the business. If you aren't paying yourself at all or very little, so there's that balance of like, in this season, what actually makes sense. Yeah. Because I have also seen that people that they make all their decisions based on the profit that they're going to have from that thing. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, so they buy the thing, or they, and then I'm like, that's scary. I'm not saying never, but you got to be very careful about that.
Yeah. Over leveraging, especially, or I can use that in my business with equipment. So we just bought equipment 3 years in, rented it forever, but to save money, but it costs more to rent than it does to buy. But I understood the risk there with buying a piece of equipment and having to make that payment, for. So just something like that, leveraging. I talked about Dave Ramsey; he's anti-debt. Yeah. But also listen to Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone. So Tommy Mello, some guys like that, and Alex Hormozy. They, he's done everything debt free. But he's not against debt. Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. I want to leverage debt, in business smart though, because the way I look at it is everybody that works at ZB Electric, like I'm feeding their family, or I'm not, but the business is feeding their family, and I have to manage this business properly, or kind of screw everybody up. Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot of pressure on a business owner for that part. Yeah.
We were last week we were and I was calling him Gordon, but Jeff Gordon. That's what he was talking about, was when you have people that work for you, it is very much like there's another level of weight on your shoulders, because if you're a good human being, and it's yes, there's expectations that they do their job, and obviously and do a good job, because that's like that win-win. And yet you do have to think, man, if I mess this up, or if I make a decision, and interesting, sometimes the decision you make, sometimes you don't see it coming, but it impacts more than just me, my family, the people that work for me. And there's a lot of pressure in that. Yeah. How do you handle that?
Well, my wife's in school to be a therapist, so she helps me a lot with that.
That's yeah.
But something else is making good decisions fast. So they may be good for the business and very hard decisions, if like letting somebody go or something like that. That's something that I have to learn, because I'm a people person. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but at the same time, I have to protect the business and those families. So yeah, just making good decisions fast. My wife helps me a lot with the mental part of business, I guess you would say, and just being able to handle that, without going to other like vices, I guess, to deal with stuff like that. So there's a lot of pressure every day. So just that, talking with people. So that's another important thing, like mentors, people that have been there. They can tell you, look, it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. You're going to have the peaks and valleys is another book I've read. So you're going to have peaks and you're going to have valleys. You just got to learn to get through them.
Yeah. So, that would a lot of people don't realize how much environment matters. And your wife, your mentors, people that you're around, that environment matters, because when you're going through something that's hard, you got the pressure. It doesn't matter how long you've been in something. I think become isolated, it's really easy to be like, well, I'm the only one that feels this way. Like, and then I go back to like the gentleman that I'm, that is in coaching with me, that is, I'm just like, where you are is I'm not a big fan of the word normal, because I'm like, it's just a setting on a washing machine, but like you're on the path. And if you're building a business, if you're doing something, having somebody around you going, yeah, this is hard and it's fine, or it sucks. I'm not even saying it's fine, it's hard, but like it will pass. Keep doing the things, or let's look to see what adjustments we need to make. But it's not always supposed to be easy. I love, and I've got to go back and re-listen to this, because I'm sure I've misquoted this, but it's the rule of thirds. You should, when you're doing something hard or something new, you should feel good a third of the time. You should feel like nothing really works a third of the time, or not you should, but you're going to feel like, and then you're going to, a third of the time, you're going to be like, it's okay. Right. And so as long as you're like looking at that and going, okay, so sometimes I think about, because I've been coaching now since 2015. And, 2015. But I stepped out in February to do it on my own. And so I'll look at that, like I'll have a week that I'm like, yeah. Or maybe 3 days of that week, I'm like, man, we are nailing it. I've got the advertising, I got this. And then like the doubts will creep in or something will happen. And I'm like, oh, I think I might need to call somebody. Yeah. And then you have the 3 days, you're like, oh, yeah, that was fun. And so, paying attention to those, like, but if you get further than a third, you might need to check something out, But that's really helped me kind of just realize, like, that's, again, typical, or that's part of the process maybe. But yeah, your environment really matters, because if you're sometimes even the most... the people that care about you the most can sometimes hold you back unintentionally, because they care about you so much. They want to cushion the landing. They don't want you to go through hard things. And so, you want those people in your world too. Don't get me wrong, because sometimes you need that, but you also need those people that just say, like, look, you've been through harder stuff. You got this, Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I love what you said about your grandmother. I think that is so cool. She's like, I got you, honey. Yeah. I wrote some ads.
Yeah. She was really happy about that too. Yeah. I keep them as 3 of them, but we got business from those. Like, it was really cool.
Yeah. So I feel like, you definitely need to hang those up in your office. Yeah, that's cool. So now you, and you mentioned something, and I think this is, you talk about the leverage and the debt. Because I think there's a difference between, I got into debt, and I've been very, probably more open on this than I should be, but I figure that most of the things that I coach people on is because I screwed it up royally at one point or another. And like a lot, like now I actually would just kind of, if anybody that knew me when I was in my early 20s would be like, Alivia, but it's because like I have hired so many people and fired them, or they quit, or all of the above, and some of them it was because I was just terrible hiring. Well, I guess ultimately it's all my responsibility, so it was just me having to learn through that process, and then going, okay, how do I get, like, I got to master this, and then I got to coach, and then you go to the trainings, and where was I going with the? So kind of the same thing with finances. Like, it was 2019, where I was kind of the same. I was like, I make good money. Like, what's happening here? And, so I got a coach specifically around that part of my life. And, which was really cool, because, whenever, was it 2019? It must have been 2018, because in, January of 2020, I had got everything lined up so that I could step out of the travel that I was doing for it was a program called Bold Business Objective Life by Design in March, and we were paid well. It was, but in March, everything got shut down. So those coaches went a year with like no pay. So everybody's kind of scrambling to figure out like, we got to go a different direction. And my coach at the time was Drew, and Drew Lee, shout out. He said, and it was that and a couple other things. And he was like, do you have like a crystal ball? And I'm like, well, my mama prays a lot, so she may have helped this happen. But it was so I say all that to say, like, there's a challenge of going into debt because of your mindset, or what was for me, it was always when we would sell real estate, we didn't have my brother got into it, then another brother got into it, and then I got into it, like this whole thing. But we grew up dirt poor. Now this is still on us, but our whole thing was, if you owe Uncle Sam more, sell another house. But now you still got to pay him more, right? And so I had to get really intentional. So I do think that there is a difference between, and I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey, because I think for my personal world, and I'm still not anywhere where I would like to be, but I always figure you're on that journey or that path. But like your personal world, you have to look at it and go, okay, this may be the place where it doesn't make sense for me to take on debt, because it's not an investment. I could wait, I could whatever. Now, business, can I leverage this debt? Can it help me make more money? Can it, X, Y, Z? Again, not to the extreme. I love what you shared about the, like, you rented the equipment. Yes, you could have bought it. And I imagine that a lot of business owners would have talked themselves into buying because, well, it's cheaper. But in the moment, like, what was your thoughts around that piece that it actually made more sense for you to rent than buy at that point?
Yeah. For me, the equipment I needed was for the generator. So it was like, well, if I buy this, but I don't, generators are a roller coaster as far as sales. So if I buy this, I have to pay it every month, and so it was just more of a like, and another thing, I just didn't want to put the business in a bind ever. And that falls into having employees and you have to make payroll every week. So, just not wanting to mess that up was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And just moving from renting to buying was, okay, now the business has grown enough to where we're doing enough generators, like it's just gonna happen.
It pays for itself now. Yeah.
And we can use it in more ways. So that, and it's kind of, like you said, personal debt. We're on the Dave Ramsey track personally. Yeah. So that's a different thing. But in business, I'm more like Robert Kiyosaki. He's, okay, leverage, but do it smart.
Yeah.
Or Grant Cardone's just like, buy it and figure it out. I'm just kind of, so you can't, that's another thing where you can't take advice from just one person and go their way. It may not work for you like it did for them.
Yes.
So, yeah, just leveraging stuff, really making a plan, especially in finances for a business, making an overall plan and then sticking to that plan every day. I think something you said earlier, if you can get really overwhelmed with the big picture, so you make that big picture plan for years, 5 years, however long that is, and then you just work it daily. Like, you just kind of make it through the day. Like, okay, this day is good, now tomorrow. And then, so that's an important thing.
Yeah. And I always equate it back to, because I think everybody at some point in their life, they can relate to gaining weight or losing weight, right? So, like, I know with my brothers at certain points in their life, they were like, oh, I just want to gain weight. I want to be buff, right? And my little brother, he said, all of my older brothers kept saying, no, enjoy being thin. He said, it won't last forever. And now he's almost 40. He's still pretty thin, but he's like, yeah, it's different. But yeah, so it's like, okay, if I want to gain 10 pounds or lose 10 pounds, once you know where you're going, you just have to know the route that you're going to take to get there. And then you're going to celebrate every day that you did that piece of the route. You can't beat yourself up because, I'm not there. Well, no, because you'll be there here if you keep doing these pieces. And the other reason I'm a big fan of having the plan is you are going to get off course. I look at the plan as like, that's I-20. you're gonna get off the exit. You need a Coke. But if you know where the plan is, it's easier for you to get back to it, or to make adjustments because life happens. Success doesn't like this. But if you know, then you can kind of get back. But yeah, I think that's a huge piece to just realize you just like work the plan. There are certain things that you just have to kind of put your head down and just do, and just do, and just do, and just know that. And then, like you said, as long as you have a coach, you have somebody that periodically you guys are going, okay, you've had your head down, you've been doing that thing. Now let's evaluate what's your results, what's happening, what didn't happen. There was one client that I had, and it was he was a realtor, and he mainly did. He was he wasn't a big people person. As far as like just going out and knowing people. So he did, most of his was like just heavy phone sales. And he was trying to get the skills with a particular group. And it was interesting to listen to him because I'm like, well, what are you saying? So like we would role play. And I was like, and you're at, like, it's just, and the number of people he was calling, I'm like, there's something that. So I said, you know what? Record yourself. And of course, every state's different, but in his state, as long as one person knew it was being recorded, it's legal. And so he recorded himself, and I got to listen, and I was like, oh. And he knew the dialogue. The challenge is it was like rapid fire, like he was interrogating them, and there was no, like they weren't actually having a conversation. And I was able to hear that. We made that just that adjustment, because obviously like we made that one adjustment and boom, it just changed, and so I think that's where having that other perspective comes in and makes a big difference. But yeah, that's interesting. But do the thing. What is the thing? Do the thing over and over and over. Yeah, give good service, and ask, because if they don't, I love that you said what if
they don't know you, they can't flow you.
Yeah.
I say that.
Yeah, that's huge. Because even like, I know like a lot of business, they think about like, hey, we need to keep a database, we need to do this, but you guys do that. Y'all have a database of your people. You can call and, check to see if they need need anything else. You can thank them for their business. Like that's a huge piece. So, because again, like it wasn't like when you worked at, where you worked before, that's not something that you did.
No.
So, when did you start keeping track of your people? Was that from a book? Was that from a coach? Like how did that go about?
I think it really started from the research, but then my business coach, it was important to keep up with them, but also follow up. So that's the big thing I always say is we build it's not a relation. I mean, it's not a transactional relationship with customers. We want a relationship, like long term, and so we're not trying to get in, get some money and run.
Yeah.
So
I call it dating and dumping.
Yeah, we're not doing that. So trying to stick around. So, and then we also care, like we legitimately want to serve them and have that relationship.
Yeah. It's
really neat to go in a store and you've done electrical work for somebody and you don't have to duck and like hide from them, They actually talk to you and, how's the family, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that part of it's really, really cool for everybody, not just me.
Okay. Yeah. So if you were to give advice to somebody that was starting their business or starting their next thing, what advice would you give them?
The number one thing is you have to know in a service world, probably in everybody's business, obviously, you have to know what to charge. But in like a home service, like we're in, you have to know your numbers and you have to know where you want to go. And you have to charge like you're there, kind of. It's a little balance there, but you have to charge like you're there or you'll never get there. Because if you're just charging like you're Zach in a 95 Tacoma, then you're just going to be Zach in a 95 Tacoma. So that's important. Knowing your numbers is number one.
So what did you... Okay, well, so number one, knowing your numbers. What else?
Number 2 would be the studying. I believe I'm 100% for coaches, mentors, coaches, almost whatever cost it is. So just do it, So knowing your numbers, getting I guess you could start with a business coach. Obviously, they're going to tell you that.
Yeah, and they're going to help you get your numbers. Yeah, especially if you're not sure of what numbers, because that was going to be the other thing that I was going to ask. So when you said, know your numbers, and I granted every business is different, but what are the numbers that you track in your business? Or when you say know your numbers, what does that mean to you?
So that's in our world. Everybody works 2,080 hours. That's a 40-hour week every week, right? So we don't do that. We can't charge like that. We're not going to work 8 hours a day every day. So just breaking those numbers down to a realistic number of how many hours we can sell in a year for us. And then all of our expenses, advertising, any expense that you have to account for it. Even if it's $5, that was something early on that I learned. I was like, well, that's just $5. That'll be okay. And no, you add that in there because it counts for something. So just knowing your overall numbers, I guess how many leads you're going to close in different businesses, or how many jobs you're going to sell. So just breaking that down to know exactly what you need to meet per hour or per day or however your business is. And then getting that goal. That's what I was talking about earlier. So if you look at the overall number for the year, for me, poor little Zach, that's a big number. So it kind of freaks me out a little bit. That's where that pressure comes in. But I just know, okay, well, I'm going to look at this, make that plan, and then, all right, today we're going to do this this week.
Yeah.
Sticking to that daily and weekly. Yeah,
breaking it down, and then it becomes much more manageable. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And whenever, how often do you look at your numbers?
About every hour.
Yeah.
I for sure a couple of times a day. Now, as far as adjusting and stuff, any kind of adjustments, I'm constantly looking at them. So, I would say adjusting them though, it's kind of like a quarterly thing, just seeing where we're at. Cause you can't really adjust if you don't measure what you've been doing, right? So that's we have KPI sheets. We keep up with everything.
And for KPI, for the people that aren't sure what that is?
Yep, key performance indicators.
Yeah. So what are your key performance indicators in your business? Yeah. 'Cause I think that's something that's, if you don't know the key performance indicators, you don't know, I think that's the other thing is you don't know for the day if you're winning or if you're losing or if you're where you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But if you know those key performance indicators, you can go, because it's one of those, okay, I might not have had a client today, but I had 15 calls or one call come in, like whatever your business needs to be at. I had this many people walk through my shop. Okay, then that's going to equate to that number.
Yeah. So a good example of that is I had the guys the other day, or one of my guys, he's like, man, I didn't hit my number, And for me, I know the big picture, so I'm like, well, it's okay that you didn't hit that, because really it is about the day, but then it's really about the week, the weekly numbers, and then if you don't do that, maybe it's really about the month, because you, like you said, you might have 15 clients one day and 2 the next.
Yeah,
as long as that average, just knowing those numbers.
Absolutely. Well, and when you know the numbers, like you said, you don't have to beat yourself up because that I didn't do it that day, but you go, okay, can I make it up this week? Okay, I made one up. I need 3 more. Well, if you know the number, you need 3 months. Okay, well, there's 4 more weeks this month. If I just make up 1 per week, I'll be exactly where I need to be. Mm-hmm. Or knowing that, hey, this month was like this and I'm at 18. So it's not about taking your foot off the gas, but if you have a month where you were down 2, well, okay, I'm actually only down 1. Mm-hmm. Because I do think a lot of times in business, it's almost playing like a mind game with yourself. Just to but I think, it's you got to track those numbers. Not one of us would play, unless we're playing with like a kid. None of us would play a softball game or a baseball game or dominoes, anything without keeping, spades. You're gonna keep score, so you know what's next. Even if I'm thinking like even when I play with my nephews, like I keep score. So you're gonna keep score. so many people don't do that in their business because they're like, oh, it'll just take care of itself. And I'm like, it's the same. I'm a big, like Dave Ramsey says, a lot of times, and I've legit been this person before. And so I'm attempting not to be this person now, but you can out earn your financial illiteracy. Mm-hmm. and I have been that person, but it catches up. And so, so I think that's with everything. So, you can't, you right now you may be out earning your, knowledge of this. Well, you better learn that, or eventually those things will catch up. I know some people that are, it's really hard for them to find talent and keep talent. And they'll say things like, nobody wants to work anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is that true? And which, again, I remember whenever I had a great mentor boss, Lori Lyons, when I was in my 20s. She's the one that owned the daycare. And we used to say that. We'd be like, oh, my God, everybody's stupid. And she goes, you think maybe that's the problem? Is it us? Like, we keep saying they are. That's what we're looking for. And so we changed the way we looked at things, and things changed. Yeah. And I'll see people that talk about, there's nobody out there that wants to work. And I'm like, well, tell me what you're doing to find people. And they're like, blah, 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 or start talking about something else. I'm like, hold on. Like, where's the ad running? Are you telling people about it? Are you this, that, or the other? I'm like, that's, it's easier to say that nobody wants to work than actually do the work to find people and make sure, are you paying somebody what it's like? I don't want to work for you if you pay me $4 an hour, Right. So, I think but when I said that, you kind of smiled. So
yeah, that's been a big thing. So I talk about it all the time to the guys. We're in the electrical space, so we go to electrical supply houses, right, for supplies. Well, there's other electricians there. So going in, and I don't want them to fake it. Obviously, if they're not happy, then you're not happy. Yeah. But, going in, when people ask you how you're doing, like, hey, I'm doing great. Like, and they actually do. It's cool. Our work environment's really cool. But they go in, they're happy. They're not dragging around. Yeah, I'm making it today. Yeah. They're like, yeah, man, we're going to do this or that. And so you're always recruiting. Yes. When people, and this has happened. So this isn't just talking about it. They've been in the supply house. People have gotten our number for a job and called us. So, that you're just recruiting all the time. Yeah.
No matter what we're doing, we're always interviewing for our next opportunity. And the way that we show up at the bank, mad, sad, mean. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that everybody has to be perfect all the time. I promise you, I have. Yeah. This is terrible. This was probably 10 years ago, 15, probably closer to 15 years ago. I don't remember. But I was playing softball, and I've played softball my whole life. I still play sometimes now, and I need a softball team, co-ed softball team, by the way. I'm pretty good. But I've always played, and I was playing a terrible game, but it was slow pitch softball. I think I struck out or something. I struck out looking. I'm like, it's slow pitch softball. And, but it was, and I remember getting so irate with the umpire, like yelling at him. I'm like, just acting a fool. And, but it had nothing to do with it, right? It was all this other stuff that happened. And I had to go back to him, and go, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Like, there are two things, because I do, and of course, everybody, it's, umpires are kind of like the easy person to, you don't like what you're doing, everybody yells at the umpire, and everybody's convinced, I always laugh because they don't like my team or they don't like us. I'm like, they don't know you. Like, I've umpired. They don't care. Now, I'm not saying no, but majority of them, they're not out to get your 10-year-old and, or your 30-year-old, right? Because you always have that. And, but I'll have, but even in that moment, like with me showing my butt, because actually back then, I was selling houses and so a lot of those people did business with me, and I'm like, oh my God, that is who they think I am now. It was, and so, but I had to go back and clean that up because it was wrong. Yeah. Like I had to, but, and you do have to eat crow sometimes because life happens, you screw things up. But but yes, you're always interviewing for your next opportunity. So how you show up, how you do business, how you clean things up. I think that, because we're not looking to be perfect, but 100%, your guys going in there, starting even from you having a good environment and start that process, because nobody wants to bring somebody else into a bad environment. It's like, ugh. So, and you had mentioned, I thought this was interesting. You had mentioned, y'all have like a daily devotional. It was, I think it's early every day, like at 7.
Yeah, 7 to 7:30.
Yeah. Because what time do y'all start your day? 7:30. Okay.
Well,
so
if we can, sometimes we're running a little late. We get a little involved, but yeah, 7:30.
And have you always, like from the big beginning of your business, have you started that? Has that been more recent? What does that look like?
We've, so when I first started, it was just me and apprentice, and it was my cousin. And, that was a little different situation, just us in a truck, right?
Yeah.
So, but ever since I've had an office, we've done that.
Yeah.
And so that's really good. We don't, we just, if somebody's got problems in life, we just help each other.
Yeah.
Just there to talk. So
yeah,
it's good.
That's a huge piece. I know, like, and a lot of times, I think you and I have talked about this as well. About, we have like the Harrison Lilly team, real estate team does that. The Lilly Roofing, a lot of productive companies that have a good culture. That's what because what's Susan Scott say? Not every conversation can change the world, but any one conversation might.
Yeah.
And if you're not, and it's so easy to go a week and not talk to somebody because everything's kind of going okay, or you think it is. And then you go 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then you feel like everything, hits the fan, and people don't, I'm like, that built up.
Yeah.
You weren't able to see the temperature of people. So, so you guys meeting every day, that's huge. It doesn't, and whether it's a devotional, it's just like checking in face to face or on the phone or something. Cause you can tell, okay, wow, they're not showing up. And it's not about like, and of course in your business, they're paid, right? But like but let's say that you have, but in other businesses, maybe they're independent contractors or whatever. It's not that it's not, you can't require it, but if you have somebody that's not showing up day after day, or maybe they usually show up and then they're not, it's a good indicator. And it's not about calling and being like, why are you showing up? It's like, is everything okay? And usually that'll be a good indicator of they are dealing with something that they thought they had to do by themselves versus like, no, like, sometimes we can't help. Maybe it's with a kid or it's this or that, but I can be a shoulder to lean on. I can say, I'm here just for listen. You. Yeah. You can just listen. I think sometimes people forget how important that piece of it is, just listening, not fixing, not just, hey, I'm just here. I'm just going to be here.
Yeah. We do something else on Fridays. We're in the Entree Leadership Program.
Okay.
So on Fridays, they get an email and they can put whatever to ask them about their stress level, workload level, and just life overall. So it's a good feedback. I get to look at that and just track that just to see how everything's going.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most one. So a lot of people think in my world, okay, well, I'm an electrician. I'm a great electrician, right? So I'm just going to get a phone call. I'm going to go do that work, and that's it. I'm going to get paid.
Yeah.
But when you grow, you're now I'm in the people business, like and truly caring about those people is a big thing. So that's a huge part of what a business owner does, is caring for your people.
Yes, and interesting enough, right? Because if you watch TV and movies and everything, like owners, business people, like they're all evil and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you have to have drama or there's not good TV, right? Yeah. Like if you just had a whole bunch of good people running around, like, I think about, there are some shows that works that way. I remember growing up on the Cosby Show, and I'm sure I could name a few others, but like, yeah, but for the most part, what people watch, it's the reason why people slow down to watch the car wrecks or whatever. It's got to have that drama aspect. And so not a whole lot of drama when you have like a good environment.
Yeah.
And yet I don't, even if you disagree with the way maybe a business owner or somebody does something, I don't know. I can't really say that I know anybody that I'd be like, oh, they're evil, right? I might be like, I don't agree with, or that's not the way I would do it, or that's not my, oh, yeah, that's not a cup of tea, or maybe they're this or that. But as far as just being like, oh, they're there to like screw people over or treat all their, people bad. I said, are there employers who haven't, who don't have your mindset, or they haven't done the learning or the education or to know how to talk to people? 100%. But most of that, I think it's more lack of knowledge or lack of caring, or maybe it hasn't been brought to their attention, so they don't realize that they're coming off the way they come off. I have an older brother that it's always interesting whenever people share about him. They're like, oh yeah, when I first met him, I thought he was an asshole. And I'm like, really? Tell me about that. And he's a big guy. He's only 5'11", but he's one of those guys, like when you look at him, everybody's like, he's 6'2". I'm like, no, not really. But he's just this big personality, and but he started working in construction when he was really young. Like I remember, like they tell the story of, they were probably 15 or 16. They were roofing a house.
Wow.
And it was him and another brother. So he's the oldest. And so it's Avery and Andy. And the guy that they were roofing for said, hey, there any more of you guys at home? And he was like, well, yeah. He was like, well, bring them. He didn't ask about ages. And at this point, Avery had a full beard, so he thought he was a lot older. So Chuck's now roofing. He's 12 years old on a roof roofing. Like that owner may have needed to ask some questions. But they were, so he grew up, kind of in an environment that, he was never told, like, don't talk to people this way or whatever. And so, but people just do things that he says. Like that was the other, interesting thing. But nobody also, except for like, if maybe they were angry at him, nobody said like, hey, when you say that, it hurts my feelings, And, but he had to be a grown up way earlier than he needed to be a grown up. So it wasn't until he got into real estate, and when he and I partnered when I was in like my 20s, that I started telling him like, hey, I know you enough. You probably didn't mean that, but do you know that she probably just cried after? Yeah. He's like, what? I would never. And I'm like, and he is one of the first people, like he would bend over backwards not to offend you, and naturally offends people.
Yeah.
And so, but it wasn't until then, like, that anybody had ever said, like, because in anger, if somebody tells you you're being a jerk, you just tend to think that that's, we're fighting, and is that true? But did everybody say like, did you mean to say what you said? And so I think sometimes with some owners, that's the case. Like they just don't, or they're feeling the pressure and the stress, and they got to make payroll, and they're so focused on this that they're not, focused over here on how they said things. So can people appear to be a butthole or whatever? Sure. But for the most part, and again, I'm not saying everyone, for the most part, I do think that especially small business owners, like they really do have a heart for their people. Like it's not just about, you making money for you and your family, but it's how can I help them grow as well? How can I help them make more? How can I help them, have a better life? Yeah. So yeah, I think that, but it's always interesting because shows don't show it that way.
No, and that's one of our important, a big drive for me is employees to make good. I guess we don't need to dive off in that, but I have this thing against certain businesses where they just are rolling in it, and their guys are just, or their employees are like barely making it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm trying to go against.
Yeah. Well, that is, so when I was in, you said we may go there because I'm going to say this. It's like when I was in college, I worked at Hallmark, and I worked overnight at Walmart, and I went to college. And now I actually had a great experience at Walmart. I know a lot of people haven't, but like I got raises every 3 months. I did the whole bit, but it was, first I asked, and then I was, I showed up and all that. But with that said, I do think that that's, I look at that organization and they're, and again, and I think too, sometimes don't realize like how much it costs to run a business. But when you're looking at a company like Walmart, and obviously they have lots and lots of expenses, but why their employees, like why they have full-time employees that that don't make enough, that they don't also have to be on food stamps or something like that, I do get a bit hacked off at that. I'm like, they should, and I get I'm not saying that they should make $100,000 a year. Like I get it's this job pays this much, but it should pay like more than starvation wages. Like I do that does hack me off like real bad. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. So maybe we don't need to go that. Yeah, I could get on my soapbox a while for that. Yeah,
me too. That's a big thing for me. So
yeah. I think you've got to, again, like I get, a janitor at a school. I don't care if they've been there for 40 years. That job is only gonna, at some point, it's gonna top out. I get it.
Yeah.
But if they are great at their job and they do it, like let's at least let them top out. Like it should not be, and I kind of feel that way with every role. Like yeah. But yeah. So and that's most, I think, small business owners feel like you feel about that. Like you and I feel like there's times where kind of like when I stepped into coaching, there were times where, because I'm a big fan, like I'm never not gonna have an assistant. And right now, I've she's been with me for almost 2 years now, and prior to that, Maria had been with me for a couple years, and then prior to that, I had Charlie for like 4 years. I sold the business, and he stayed with the business. Yeah. But I still call him, like or I say call him, but like we message on Facebook. Like he's amazing. But like I'm probably gonna get an assistant before even like I'll take some of my personal money and pay for the assistant because, but I'm more always going like, how do I pay them more? And you can't always, but to me, like, I don't know. I just think it would be like crazy if you had like a yacht and you're, and then you're like, high five. I had a lot of people now, like TikTok stuff, they talk about like, we had a pizza party. And I'm like, I do think feeding your employees are great, but not in lieu of treating them well or paying them well.
Can't have a Christmas party once a year and that be your, give $100 bill out.
Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. So that says, and to me, I think that says a lot about you and the success that you've had, that it's not just about, matter of fact, we talked about this as we were looking at hiring the next person in your business. It's like, we're not looking for a warm body. We're kind of looking for a unicorn, and, but you're willing to pay for that too, right? Like I think that's the other piece. I think sometimes people are like, what's the cheapest I can get it at?
To get by.
Yeah. And I'm like, now, and I do, on the flip side, you can't overpay because that's stealing the profits that goes into stuff. But there is but definitely if you're like, I can get away with that that's what you're looking for.
No.
Like I remember, there was why can't I had a virtual assistant, and he was in the Philippines, and he was amazing, like so amazing. Like whenever he let me know he was going to take another job, or no, before, like I had already given him a raise because I'd reached out to the company. I'm like, I know how much you guys pay him, but he's like doing everything. How does it work if I want to give him a raise? They're like, and does that go to you? Does that go to him? Like and so they're like, and I like this company a lot. They're like, no, that we only, like, their contract is with us. That's everything else goes to them. I was like, great. So he had a raise, and then he was moving to Australia to go to college, and so he was like, I'm not going to be able to work for you when I go there because I'll be in college. And I was like, I get it. And because he was talking about some other jobs he was going to have to get. And I'm like, look, I'm very flexible. And so I was like, but we were talking about it. And so, but he ended up, like, I paid him very much like what I would end up, paying somebody in the U.S. because it wasn't about like, I want somebody at the cheapest or whatever. It was, he freaking did an amazing job. And I was like, let's reward that. And whenever we ended up, parting ways because he went that direction. But when he moved back home, I'd already hired somebody, so I didn't need that. But I connected him with somebody else, and I was like, this, could be a great fit for you too. And he's somebody that we've even had conversations about because he was also an entrepreneur. Like he had a water business, and I don't know all the ins and outs, but I was like, so he's somebody that's on my radar. Like one day I'm going to figure out how for us to go into like partnership where, in the Philippines, just, but yeah, like it's, but yeah, it's, if you're just to the point where somebody's just barely getting by, you probably need to figure out how to get more business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another part to that is too, you said like a janitor, you do have a pay level, right?
Yeah.
So I think something we've kind of figured out, and we're still figuring it out. We don't have it perfect, but to find that pay level, but then have the opportunity to make above that if we do good, and that's just to me a safe way to give more, and it also makes them involved, like they want to.
Yeah.
So instead of, I guess you would say, kind of like instead of us trying to pay the least to get the most amount of work, we're trying to just pay the most for that position so they'll do the most amount of work. Not just get by.
That's right.
That's very important.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm a huge fan of like profit share or bonuses or things to that effect where, if they helped the business get to the next level, if they brought something to the party that created a profit, how do we help them get a piece of that? And then I love, Ben Kinney talks about this a lot. He's runs lots of businesses, but he's in Washington is where he's located at. And one of the things that he talks about is, he's not the only person, but he's the one that introduced me to this concept years ago. And it was, so let's say that you have that janitor or you have that person like this, their role, that's what that role is going to top out at. But you want to keep them there and like they're happy, you're happy. What is another business that you might do something with? So if you bought an investment house, could there be some additional profit in that investment house where they get to go in there with you and do that? Or, so they may end up making this at this job, but having investment opportunities that they may not have had. So now they do get to have an increase in their lifestyle and their money and all of that. It's a win-win because they're going to stay with you longer and they get to kind of continue to upgrade their world as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be in that business necessarily, but what is your businesses that attach to it that you may be able to give them some equity or something out of there? So there's ways to do different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so what is, as we start wrapping it up, what would you like to share with somebody else? And I'd almost like to ask you, like, for people that are looking for electrical work, what would you like to share about yourself and your business? For people that are looking, three. For people that are looking to get in, start a business, any kind of last pieces for them. And then anybody that's looking for work in the electric industry, like what's your philosophy? How would they be able to contact you?
Yeah. So as far as somebody coming to us, it'd be zbelectricllc.com, and then we have the employment tab, so apply there. They can reach us at the office. That's 557-8409. And then just some, and we're always hiring. So we're always looking for electricians, apprentices. And you talked about the environment earlier. I'll add a little bit to that. I wanted to say earlier that the guys, I've asked them, like, do y'all have somebody y'all want to refer? And they're like, we know people, but they're not going to meet the standards, you know. So so and that just goes to, we're just trying to do the highest level because that's what you know, customers deserve. So and then somebody getting into business, if you're going to go into, I mean, just any service base, probably any business, but I can only just really talk about home service business, is just make a plan, you know. That's the biggest thing. I mean, if you can't get a coach, you know, maybe, you know, like me, just right at the beginning, you don't have any money, maybe, just bootstrap it, you know, go knock on doors. I drove around at night and looked for lights that were out on buildings and then called them. And I have those customers still today. So you got to put in work when you don't have any money. You got to go, or advertising dollars, you got to go put in the work. So just that, making a good plan, like how can I get customers, and then how are they going to remember that I was their electrician? We have some ways of doing that so that people don't forget who we were. You know? Because that has happened where they hire you, then a year later they're like, oh, I don't know who that was. I'm going to Google them again. And they might hire somebody else because they can't remember. But we have ways that things that we do that they're not going to forget who we are. So
that's one. That one's for everybody. That's huge. And I don't know that there's most industries, if you read up on them, people would say like, oh, I would use them again if I could remember who they were. And that's on the service person, not the person. Because I've been guilty of that. Like, oh man, who was that? You know, like I enjoyed it, but I couldn't remember. It's been so long ago. But 100%, like, stay in touch. Create a way that they can remember you, because they will use you again. Yeah.
And the CRM,
customer relations manager. So having a database, or it can start out as an Excel sheet, a Word document, a notebook, but
having that, and then and following back up, because a lot of people just in our world, they'll have a little problem. Maybe an outlet goes out or something. They forget about it, you know, and then you call them and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, and actually I wanted to do these lights, you know, so you never know what that phone call could do, and keeping up with those customers. So.
I think that's huge. Yeah. Okay. Well, very cool. All right. Well, I think that is where we're going to wrap today. I really appreciate you coming out. And if you guys need generator work, or any electrical stuff except for
new construction,
anything else, call Zach at ZB Electric. They will hook you up. And there was one other piece that I was going to ask, because I hadn't asked this right before we go. Because you had reached out to me via Facebook. How did you find out about me?
Through Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that was it. Seeing the pieces that you and Harrison had done. So
I every time we meet, and so that's the thing. Don't be like me. It should be part of my intake form. I realized that afterwards. I'm like, how did I not know that? But I was like, wow. And then Bennett, are you any relation to Shannon Bennett?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I know. Whenever he coached my little brothers when they, and then maybe my nephew or something when they played baseball, like when they were little. So, and then I know him and his wife through real estate and everything else. But super cool family.
Yeah, that's one of my mentors. So he doesn't agree with everything that I do, but I tell you, that's like taking advice from everybody.
That's right. Well, and I love, like, you can take advice or you can listen and then choose to take it or not.
Yeah.
You don't have to take everything, and sometimes you're not going to take it, and you should have. And sometimes you're going to take it and you shouldn't have. But well, he was one that, especially financially, like he's got a really cool story with like how, they were doing really well. But if you saw him, he was in this like little bitty, I don't remember what kind of truck he drove for years. Especially because he's such a big guy. And you're like, but they're super cool. He's very like with his finances.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey style.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely Dave Ramsey style. So I could see how that doesn't always line up. But yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. And go out. I don't know. We need a better tagline, but have fun, be intentional, and let's go.